we can start already the webinar. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kamal. I'm the Regional Manager of Higher Education for Southeast Asia and Pacific. Welcome to the University of Cambridge webinar hosted by Cambridge Assessment International Education. And with me today, I have our guest, Mr. Roshan Walkerley, who is the Deputy Head of International Recruitment from University of Cambridge. Welcome on board, Roshan. It's good to have you again. Some of the participants might have seen you from our previous webinar. For those who have not seen Roshan, he has presented in one webinar that we hosted 2 years ago, I think, or was it last year? And for today, Roshan will make a presentation on University of Cambridge admissions, and following that, we will have a Q&A session, some housekeeping. Your video and microphone functions have been disabled for this session. Please type your Q&A at the Q&A box and not the chat box, please. We will be recording this session and it will be shared with all the participants after this session. With that, without further ado, I would like to hand over the session to Roshan. Over to you, Roshan.
Thank you, Kamal, and a huge thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. It's great to see you. And thank you to Cambridge Assessment International Education for hosting us today. It's a pleasure to be able to join this webinar and to be able to spend some time today talking a bit about the University of Cambridge, about what we have to offer, our application and admissions process, and very importantly, some time for your questions as well. But I'll just share my screen with you now. And over the next 30-35 minutes or so, I will spend a few minutes, let's say, talking about the university and the admissions process before we move into some questions a bit later. So the University of Cambridge, you may have heard a bit about us, but today I want to tell you a bit more about what the university is all about. And that starts with how we're comprised. Well, we are what is called a collegiate university. So a university made up of a number of colleges, and there's 29 colleges that you can study at as an undergraduate student. So an undergraduate for your bachelor degree, of course. A collegiate university like Cambridge is made up of these colleges, and the colleges are your home from home whilst you're in the UK. They provide accommodation, support facilities, sports facilities as well. And it's also the colleges that have responsibility for the undergraduate admissions process for deciding if your application is successful. These colleges come together to make up the wider University of Cambridge, along with over 100 different university departments and schools and faculties. And they're where, in the departments where the research takes place, where the rest of your teaching takes place. And I'll talk about teaching in a bit more detail later. And ultimately, whichever college you study at Cambridge, your degree is from the university. So at the end of normally 3 years, but a bit longer if you're studying something like medicine, you'll be awarded your degree from the University of Cambridge, and you will have to sit some exams which are set centrally by the university. So you'll hear me talk a lot today about colleges and the university. The university is that big overall structure with the academic departments. Colleges are where you live, where you have access to your support facilities, and are generally smaller communities with between 500 and 800 approximately students or so per college. And on the screen here, you can see one of the colleges in the centre of Cambridge. This is Downing College. So what does Cambridge have to offer you, and why might you want to consider applying to Cambridge? Well, we think there's a really unique combination at Cambridge between academic excellence, a really strong sense of community and support, and a great city to explore as well. Studying at Cambridge and indeed studying in the UK means you can specialise quite early on in your degree studies if you wish. We have what we call 30 main courses or tripos that cover about 65 different subject areas. So you can specialise from the beginning in the sciences, for example, or engineering or medicine. Perhaps you're looking at programmes such as law or economics, or we have those as well. And we have programmes across the humanities, things like architecture, theology, music, as well as politics and literature, and many, many more. So if you're interested to find out more of the different subjects that Cambridge has to offer, do have a look on our website as well. What you'll find in common with all of the subjects is that you're taught by world-leading experts and you have access to so many facilities. For example, the picture here is just one of the many, many museums. There's 9 core museums across the university, over 100 different libraries that as a student you can access. The facilities are amazing to help you in your studies. And you have a supervisor at Cambridge, and this supervision system is really quite unique. And in the UK, it's really only Oxford and Cambridge that offer this kind of approach, where you have 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, so very small group teaching that takes place in your college with your supervisor. And you meet that supervisor on a regular basis, you get to know them throughout the year, and they're there to help you, support you, guide you, and really help you make the most of your time at Cambridge, and help you make the most of what is a challenging academic experience. It's a very busy, full-on timetable. You'll be working with all of their support. And in terms of that support, well, we know for many of you joining the call this afternoon, if you come to Cambridge, it'll be your first time living in the UK, perhaps your first time living away from home. And so there is a huge amount of support out there in your individual college, through your tutorial system, but also across the university, whether that's to help with visa processes and the admission side before you start, whether it's during your time actually at Cambridge and accessing student groups for international students, or counselling services or wellbeing services, or when you graduate and you have access to the career service to help you in finding internships or job vacancies or future study options in the years to come. I mentioned there's so much more at Cambridge though than just the academic experience, and with over 500 different clubs and societies across the university, there is so much to get involved in. It might be music or theatre, it might be the sports that are very, very active. There is something to participate in, whatever you're interested in, whether it's social groups, competitive groups, whether it's within your smaller college or perhaps at a university level. So Cambridge is very well known for rowing, and we have the river that runs through the middle of the city, and you can, even if you've never been on a boat before, you can join and give it a go. Or maybe you're a really strong athlete that has competed before and you'd like to get more coaching and more experience in whichever sport. Well, the university will guide you and support you as needed. Cambridge as a city is quite a small city. We have only about 150,000, 160,000 people, but it's a city full of young people, full of events and activities. As well as ourselves, we have Anglia Ruskin University in the city. So there's a lot of events, a lot of activities happening. It's a really relaxed city, quite small, as I say. You can walk from one side to the other in about 20 or 25 minutes. Most students have a bike as well, so really easy to travel around. But if you do want to explore further, if you would like to head back to a bigger city, for example, where you could be in London in less than 1 hour, and you can travel by train easily from Cambridge across the UK to places like Manchester or Edinburgh, and to Scotland and Wales, and to explore from Cambridge as well. The time at university, we hope, is a real balance between your academic experience, and the academic demands at Cambridge are quite significant. You will be spending a lot of time working independently and reading, but also taking the time to relax and to get to know students from all over the world who come to join us here at Cambridge. So one question we're often asked, especially from international students, is accommodation guaranteed, and is it easy to find somewhere to live in the city? And well, yes, it is. As a student at Cambridge, you would be guaranteed accommodation for the first 3 years of your course, and if you study one of the programmes that's a bit longer, most colleges will be able to help you find accommodation for the rest of your degree as well. And you only actually pay for your accommodation whilst you're living in the accommodation. And at Cambridge, we have 3 terms per year, and you normally have between 4 and 6 weeks of vacation time between each term, so you don't have to pay for your accommodation when you're not there. If you're travelling home or travelling elsewhere, or maybe taking an internship, then you would be moving away from Cambridge. You can leave your personal belongings, but you don't need to pay for your accommodation at that time. Loads of different types of accommodation. Some is shared bathrooms, some has a private bathroom, some you have your own kitchen area, others you may have dining facilities in the college. Every college is slightly different. Some have very traditional, very much older buildings, others have very modern ensuite accommodation. So every college will be slightly different, but you are guaranteed your accommodation, whichever college you study at. And as I say, students at Cambridge are supported very heavily by our careers service to help you throughout your degree, and even when you graduate, so you can come back to us in 5 years or 10 years' time and get more advice. Graduates from Cambridge are highly sought after. We have many, many employers from all over the world come and meet Cambridge graduates and work with them to find a suitable job for them in the future. Of course, many of our students also stay in education for master's programs or PhD programs as well. But you can see Cambridge in 2020 was ranked in the top 10 globally for graduate employability. And that's something that the university keeps working hard on to prepare students for their careers and the world of work, whatever that may be and wherever that may be, whether it's staying in the UK or for many of our international students heading all over the world for their next vacancy, their next job opportunity. So if you like the sound of what you've heard so far, then perhaps Cambridge is right for you. And so I'd like to spend a few minutes today talking about what we as a university actually look for. So at Cambridge, we have quite a broad, a holistic, if you like, review of a student's characteristics. Slightly different though from the US, in that in many UK universities, and Cambridge is one of these, we are really looking closely at your academic background, at the qualifications that you have achieved or predicted to achieve. Your performance at high school will be really important. But we do look at everything together. So we look at your academic record, we're looking to determine your academic background and your academic potential to succeed. The courses at Cambridge are highly academically demanding. We are looking for students who are able to really begin their studies, to hit the ground running, to be able to cope with those challenging and high workloads from the beginning. So we're looking for strong performance in your previous studies, and we'll talk about requirements in a moment. We're looking at your personal statement. So this is your UCAS personal statement. For those of you who haven't come across UCAS yet, this is the University and Colleges Admissions Service who look after applications to the UK. So our application is based on UCAS. You make your initial application to them, which includes your statement, your reference, which your school will provide for you, your teacher, your advisor, your counsellor will prepare that for you. And then we have a few of our own things that we look at as well. So some written work and some extra assessments, which we'll come back to. So ultimately, we are looking for students with the best academic fit, the strongest academic background and potential to succeed. We're not looking for students from particular backgrounds or particular schools or certain curriculum types. We're looking for enthusiasm, for knowledge. We're looking for students that are going to be a good fit. That's the number one and most important thing. So for those of you currently studying or who've recently completed Cambridge International A-levels, our requirements are between 2 A stars and an A to A star AA. It depends slightly upon the subject area that you are applying to. So if you are applying for a course in sciences, in engineering, in economics, for example, the requirements are usually at the higher end, so A star, A. And for programs in the humanities and the arts subjects, it's typically A star, AA. But it's really important that you check our website to make sure you have the latest information, and to make sure you check for the subject requirements as well. So for example, if you are applying to a programme such as engineering, we are going to be looking to see if you have taken mathematics, for example, and physics usually at A level. We will look at a broad variety of different qualifications. We will look at your previous studies as well, and any additional programmes or qualifications you're taking alongside your A levels. For example, if it's the Cambridge IPQ, that could be an extra thing that enhances your application. Whatever else, that will be considered as well, but the core requirements are based on your 3 A-level subjects. And as I say, really important to check the subjects they match, because there is an assumed level of knowledge that is required for some of our courses, particularly those in the sciences, engineering and mathematics. And it's important you meet those subject areas. We don't have a minimum requirement for your IGCSE. So for those of you who have taken Cambridge IGCSEs, that will be something we'll look at as part of the application process. But we don't specify a minimum number that must be taken or a minimum grade for those. They're just another part, that we look at. So there's broadly 8 key steps as part of the application process to Cambridge. So we're going to spend just a few minutes now talking through these 8 key steps. And the first one of these is all about choosing your course. And this might be something that many of you are looking at the moment. So when you choose your course, it's really about thinking, what are you most interested in? What is it that you enjoy? What is it that you'd like to learn more about? What is it that really stands out to you? But do keep it broad. Do look at some different options. For example, if you have an interest in some design-based subjects at the moment, maybe you might want to consider architecture, for example. It might be something you're not so familiar with, but actually there's an amazing career ahead there. Or, for example, if you're really interested in history at the moment, well, you might want to study some history options in the future, but is it history and something else? Or we have a course such as Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic studies, a very, very specialist option within the kind of wider history sphere. So do have a look at all of the options, and do have a look on the website where you'll find the different options within each subject. At Cambridge, we call them papers. So you normally take 4 papers per year. Paper is a module really, or a unit, a section of the course. So you can see which papers you would study for a particular subject area. Once you've chosen your course, you can have a look at which of the different colleges you can actually study your course at. As I say, your colleges are where you live, your colleges undertake the admissions process, and where your supervisions, your small group teaching, take place. Most colleges offer most of the subjects at Cambridge, but not every college offers every subject. So it's important to check. And there's a useful guide on the website that just has a big table, and you can look through and check which subject area. As I say, most subjects are offered at most colleges. So you'll then want to think about which of the colleges you would like to apply to. And you apply to a specific college by making that preference on the initial application. But if you are not too sure, you can also make what is called an open application. So an open application simply means you haven't made a preference, and we will automatically allocate you to one of the colleges to be considered. So if you're not too sure, you don't mind too much, then do make an open application. It's absolutely fine to do so. There's no advantage or disadvantage if you make an open application. If you do choose a college, you'll choose one of the 29 or however many offer your subject. And really, you'll just want to think about where's right for you, whether it's thinking about location. So do you prefer a city centre college or one that's perhaps away from the busy centre of Cambridge? Do you prefer a newer or an older college? Do you prefer one that's slightly larger? Do you want certain types of sports facilities? For example, if you're very interested in swimming, one of the colleges has an indoor pool, 2 of the colleges have an outdoor pool, so you might want to choose accordingly. So it really is about the best fit for you. And if you're not too sure, do have a look on our website. We have a virtual tour that's got videos and photos and blogs from students at all of the colleges, so you can hear from them, from current students, about the different options really that are out there. The next thing you need to do is have a look, once you've chosen your subject and chosen your college, is whether they require you to complete an extra admissions assessment. So at Cambridge, we do have a number of subjects that require an assessment to be taken before you apply. These are administered and organised by Cambridge Assessment Admissions Testing. They have a test called the BMAT for medicine, so the biomedical admissions test, and a number of other tests for subjects such as natural sciences, engineering, and economics, amongst others. With these assessments, you do need to register in advance. In most cases, you'll be able to complete this assessment either at your own school or perhaps at a local school, but it's really important that you get registered early. Cambridge Assessment are just working on the final arrangements for this year, so do have a look online soon. The deadlines are likely to be very early in October. The BMAT deadline to complete your BMAT assessment in November is normally the 1st of October each year. So assume you'll need to register by the 1st of October to be able to complete these assessments. It's really important to register on time and to check where you'll be able to complete this assessment, and your school will be able to help you with that. So after that, we now get to the middle of October and to your UCAS application. So as I say, UCAS, the Central Admission Service for all UK universities and colleges. Your deadline, if you are applying to Cambridge, or indeed to Oxford, or to medicine, veterinary or dentistry at any UK university, is the 15th of October, 6 PM UK time on the 15th of October 2022. The course is starting in October 2023. And within your UCAS application, you'll need to prepare your personal statement. It's about 600 words that tells us why you're interested in a particular subject area, what is it you're hoping to achieve in the future, and how you've prepared yourself for that subject. At Cambridge, we really like to see personal statements that's very academically focused. We like to see students who have developed an interest in a certain subject area, whatever subject it may be, but to show that you've thought about, developed some interests in chemistry or in international relations or in law or in music or whatever subject it may be. So this personal statement is one personal statement for all 5 of your UCAS choices, and it will need to be submitted as part of that application, as I say, in October. But here at Cambridge, we do have our own extra application form. We will email you a link to complete this. It's called My Cambridge Application. You'll receive an online login to My Cambridge Application. And we'll ask just a few extra questions that aren't included within the main UCAS application. It allows us to be able to compare students from all over the world and to find out a bit more about you, about your background, about the topics that you've studied at the moment. So we'll ask you for a bit more detail about your A-level or your international A-level options. And if you are applying to a course at Cambridge that's very different to elsewhere, you can submit a second personal statement. So for example, we have a course at Cambridge called Land Economy. Land Economy is, I suppose, a combination really of some law, some studies in economics and geography. It's really quite a unique and interesting combination, but it's slightly different to our other universities. So your main personal statement that goes to all 5 in UCAS may be less relevant. So if you're applying for something that's really different at Cambridge, you can submit an extra application, so an extra personal statement as part of My Cambridge application. And the deadline for completing this will be a week after the UCAS deadline. Step 6. Well, step 6 is about either taking your assessment. So this would normally happen if it's things like the BMAT or the other admissions assessments at the beginning of November. So you'd have registered in advance and you'd then complete your assessment. For other courses, we will ask you for some written work. So if you are applying for a course, perhaps in history or politics, we'd be interested to see that you are writing well at the moment, that you have some extended written pieces. We might look at some coursework, we might look at some evidence from an IPQ, for example, or something similar. So you can submit 2,000, 3,000 words, something like that, that you've already written, maybe from some coursework, but it will come to us so our tutors can learn a bit more about your written style. And then for a small number of subjects, we have assessments as part of the interview process. So you wouldn't, in these subjects, register in advance. You wouldn't submit any written work. But if you're invited to interview, then we would undertake a test with you as part of the interview process. It might be a written assessment online. It can vary slightly from college to college. So more details would be shared nearer the time. Which brings me on to interviews. The interviews are an important part, really, of the application process at Cambridge. They're not the final part, and indeed we look at your performance at interview alongside everything else in the application. And if you are working at the level that is required for Cambridge, you meet on the kind of other core requirements, then there's a good chance you would be invited to complete an academic interview. The interviews usually take place in December. We normally just have one interview, but for some colleges, or if you're applying for a joint honours subject, you might have 2 or 3 interviews, normally around 30 minutes or so. And the interviews are your chance to really talk through a problem in a discussion-based format. They're an example of the type of teaching that we have at Cambridge, the supervisions, as we call them. So the interviews, you might be given a short passage of text to read, or an artifact to talk about, maybe a map or a graph to look at, whatever's relevant to your subject. And your tutor, the interviewer in this case, will be working with you to really help you discuss and draw out your knowledge about a particular area. So they're academic-based interviews. They're not interviews about things that you've perhaps done in the past. They're about a particular topic that will be relevant to the subject that you are applying for. So say interviews usually take place in December, and we then in early January collate all of the feedback on the interviews from all the different colleges, and this is where decisions are made. And there's a few things that can happen. The first is that unfortunately you may be unsuccessful, you may not be made an offer, and this does happen every year to really, really great students that apply to Cambridge. We have students applying from all over the world, from a really broad variety of backgrounds that are really strong academically, and unfortunately we just have a limited number of places available. And so there are students who would be really great fit for Cambridge, but we just don't have the space available, and perhaps didn't score as highly on their interview or their admissions assessment, or in one of the other areas of the application process. If that does happen to you, it is always worth remembering that we're only one of 5 UCAS application choices. We're normally the first to get back to you, so you would normally expect to hear more from the other universities you've applied to in the following months. However, hopefully you would be successful, and in that case you would be made an offer that is normally conditional upon achieving your final grade. So if it's your Cambridge International A-levels, we would say, you have your place for the geography course. Upon successful completion of your A-levels, achieve the A-star and 2 A's that we require, and we'll be able to confirm your place accordingly. Now, your offer may come from the college that you have applied to, but it may also come from a different college. And that's because we have a system called the pool. And the pool means that you have had your application reviewed by the first college you applied to. They looked at your application and thought it was a really strong application, but didn't have any more spaces available themselves. So they passed your application to another college who could give you a second consideration. And if that other college thought, yes, actually, you're a really good student, we would like to accept them, then they would take your application instead. So it depends from college to college and course to course, but something like a third of students or so every year would receive, who receive an offer, would receive it from a different college that they had applied to. So you would expect to hear from us by the end of January next year, regardless of what the outcome is, whether it's successful or unsuccessful, so that you do have it early on, so you can consider all of your different options. So just as a reminder, the application process really starts, well, now and over the next few months, about looking at the options, choosing your courses, looking at the different colleges, and really finding out more about what Cambridge has to offer. There's a particularly busy time then in the application process in September and October, where you will be registering for admissions assessments and you'll be working on your UCAS application. Then by the 15th of October, that must be submitted. In early November, you would complete an assessment if that's required for your subject area. And for other subjects, it wouldn't be until December you would take that assessment as part of the interview process. So you would hear from us in November if you've been successful for an interview. That would take place in early December. And then, as I say, you would expect to hear from Cambridge next January upon the result of your application. There's quite a lot of steps involved in the Cambridge process, those kind of 8 key steps that we outline. We do have much more information on the website, so if you haven't been able to catch all of that today, do head to the University of Cambridge website. We have a YouTube channel which has got loads of videos as well to help with the application process and interview process and much more. We also have our virtual tour, so you can have a look on there. It shows you some information about the different colleges, the different parts of the university, so you can explore those in your own time, the videos, the pictures, the blogs. You can also reach out to us via UniBuddy, so you can talk to a current Cambridge student, current Cambridge International student who can share their experiences with you. And we do have open days coming up online in July this year. The first week of July, there'll be different sessions at different times of the day, so you can join us typically around this kind of time, afternoon time for you, from morning time in the UK, to hear some more sessions from our admissions tutors from the departments in the different subject areas. But that's a good time for me to stop talking so that we've got time for your questions. So Kamal, I'll pass back to you and then we can start the Q&A.
Thanks, Roshan. I think indeed we have a lot of questions on the Q&A box, but I just want to start with the pre-sent questions before we move on to the Q&A box. And just for everybody's information, the Zoom recordings will be made available hopefully by tomorrow. The pre-sent questions, let me start with that, Roshan. Would having more A levels increase one chance? I think you have already answered about the personal statement. Let's go to the first one. Would having more A levels increase one chance?
Yeah, so the minimum that the university looks for is 3 A levels. Some applicants to Cambridge do have more than 3 A levels. One subject area in particular where it can be valuable to have 4 A levels is students applying to mathematics, where students would have both mathematics and further mathematics A level, as well as 2 other subject areas. So I'd say in this area, in this subject in mathematics, it can be particularly strong. In terms of the students who come to Cambridge every year, some will be admitted with 3, some will be admitted with 4. But the best advice is, if you're not sure how many you're able to work on at the moment, or you're worried about the grades, you are more likely to be successful if you have high grades in 3 A levels than good grades in 4. A student who has 2 A stars and 1 A meets the requirements. A student who has 4 A levels but all are a grade A wouldn't normally meet those requirements. So you're better to work really, really hard and secure the best grades you can on 3, perhaps rather than looking at more.
Right. The next question is about the personal statement. I believe you have answered it during your presentation just now. The next two questions with regard to test and interview, I'll just leave it to you to answer the next two questions, Roshan.
Yeah, of course. So the key thing when students are preparing for an interview is thinking about the types of questions that you're likely to be asked. And we've done lots of video guides on these. And one of the most important things within an interview is you're going to be asked something that will be unfamiliar to you. There'll be a topic that you probably haven't come across in high school. And it's thinking about how you can talk around what you can see. You may not know the exact answer, but if somebody presents you with a table, for example, you might be able to talk about what information is displayed in the table. And so don't worry too much about the exact content. You won't be able to predict what you're going to be asked about, but have a think about how you can just get used to answering different questions, different topics, see if your tutor or advisor can help you with the mock interview. Really, it's about preparing to talk about something that you're not too familiar with, but just to talk around a subject that, as say, you don't know, that sort of being thrown into the unknown, as it were. And in terms of whether we require test or interviews for all subjects, yes, pretty much all. Well, every subject will interview, and all has some kind of assessment. So that might be the formal admissions assessments that take place in November. So that's for subjects like medicine and natural sciences and economics, or it might be one of the written pieces that you submit, or it might be a test that happens as part of the interview. But everything has some kind of additional assessment. In terms of the, sorry, well,
yeah, please go ahead. I think I just want to go on to the next question, but please go ahead.
Yeah, so the next couple of questions, in terms of why some colleges have written tests and some do not. So each college at Cambridge, and as I say, there's 29 at undergraduate level, are their own legal entity, their own educational body run by their own college master, their own college fellows, and each is responsible for admissions for their own students. So although many things are the same between the different colleges, some colleges will just have a slightly different way of completing the admissions process. And so some admissions tutors may ask students to complete a test and some may not. That's why it's really, really important to check online for whichever college you are applying to, or whichever college you're thinking about at the moment, because it can vary slightly. Most things are similar, but yeah, it can be slightly different. And likewise with the next question, with the scholarships, they can vary slightly from college to college as well. Our general scholarship, the Cambridge Trust Scholarship, which is usually around a £10,000 scholarship, that is available to students at any college. It is very competitive. It's open to students from all over the world to apply to. So they are a limited number of scholarships. Some colleges may have additional scholarships for international students that you may be considered for. And so it's best to check on the college websites there as well. And Kamal, I'll just come on to the final question about AS levels. At the university at Cambridge, we would need full A levels rather than AS levels. Unfortunately, AS levels on their own wouldn't be considered to meet the requirement for the university.
Roshan, on this AS level, I think there is a related question from the chat, from the Q&A box. Can they submit their AS level as a predicted grades as part of the early application requirement?
So in terms of the process, we are basing our judgments on predicted grades, and so a student who has completed AS levels and that's been used to inform their prediction and their final A level grades, yeah, that will help, and that will be a part of the application. And if a student has completed AS levels, that will be looked at as part of their academic background, in the same way that IGCSE, for example, would be looked at as well. But ultimately, we would need students to be on track to complete full A-levels rather than
Right,
just the
right.
AS levels.
Right. So do note, please, that you may submit your ES level as predicted grades, but you need your A levels for entry as part of the entry requirements. So you can't use ES level, certainly, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Roshan, can I invite you to turn on your Q&A? And we have quite a number of questions over at the Q&A box, starting from the
Yes, let me
top.
just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question I have here is a question around which college to apply to, whether it's an open application or not. Students, I would say, if you're not sure, make an open application. There's no advantage or disadvantage of doing so, especially if you haven't yet been able to to visit, or you haven't been able to look at all the different options online. It's absolutely fine to make an open application. Your college, whoever considers your application, won't actually know whether you selected an open application or to apply to them specifically. The tutors will review your application in exactly the same way. So yeah, if you're not sure, make an open application. It will be automatically, as I say, passed to one of the colleges. The only thing I would say is if there's any one college that you don't like the look of, then you're best to pick another college, because you never know. You have a 1 in 29 chance of being allocated to that college.
Right.
So the next question I have is, can international students study for their masters after they've received their BA, and how does this affect their visas? So I should say I'm not an expert on student visas, so you would need to perhaps get more advice. But in general, yes, students can stay in the UK for a master's programme as well. You would often need to apply for an additional student visa, which you can do once you have your acceptance. It's called a CAS, your acceptance to study for the master's programme as well. So usually a separate visa from the bachelor visa. But yes, many students stay either at Cambridge or to other universities across the UK for master's programmes as well.
Right. I think there's a related question with regard to the requirements for masters. Is this going to be the same for those who are planning to do their masters and as undergraduate?
Yeah, so for master's programmes, we will base our acceptance on students' undergraduate on their bachelor's degree. We will accept a bachelor degree from many universities from across the world, not every university and not every country. So you need to check on our website, and we do have a clear list of the different countries and the different bachelor options. And for master's students, we will also be looking whether their bachelor degree, for example, has been taught in English or in perhaps their home country in another language. And so we may have an English language requirement, such as an IELTS or a Cambridge English assessment or a TOEFL test, for example, as well. So that would just be an extra requirement for master's students. But in general, the program, the process for masters is, I would say, a little bit slower. It does normally include interviews. It doesn't have admissions assessments, however, and for master's students normally should apply by December for the following October. So it's slightly, they have an extra couple of months to look at the options.
Yeah. There's a question on extra application. I'm not exactly sure what the person is asking, but I'm not
sure.
So
this might be the UCAS Extra, which is open later on in the application process. We don't accept applications through UCAS Extra. Our deadline is the 15th of October, and UCAS Extra is normally open in the period from February through to June. So for us, it's important that students get their applications in right at the beginning of the process, so there's enough time for the admissions assessments and the interviews and all the other steps. But we do accept A-level exams in any assessment period, so other students, whichever series they take in throughout the year, we accept those A-levels.
Roshan, the next two questions is about IGCSE, whether the university accept IGCSE and whether having art and design, is advantageous for students. If you could just combine these two and answer collectively.
Yeah, of course. So we do do accept IGCSEs. We do look at IGCSEs as part of the wider application profile. IGCSE is, of course, that qualification that's at the lower level from the A level. So a student who completes their IGCSEs obviously still needs to complete some additional high school programs, the A level being a good option for that. The IGCSEs are useful though, because it shows, especially when a student is only studying 3 or maybe 4 subjects at A level, it shows the breadth that they have and maybe other areas. So something like the art and design, in terms of showing those creative skills. Yes, if you're applying for a subject where there is a bit of a creative element, then it's going to be relevant. But beyond that, if you're applying for I don't know, a program of sciences, for example, the art and design may be less relevant. Likewise, if you're applying to a program in the humanities, maybe a theology program or a philosophy program, or IGCSE in environmental sciences may be less relevant. So it's thinking about the subjects that align closest to what you're applying to. But yeah, we do have a look at the IGCSEs, but there's no minimum requirement.
Right. The next question, does taking TSA test increase the chances of admission?
Yeah, so the TSA is one of the admissions assessments, thinking skills assessment that's used, that's run by Cambridge Assessment. For some of our courses, you are required to take the TSA. So you should only take it if it's required as part of the application. If you take it for another course, we wouldn't look at it and it wouldn't make any extra impact or wouldn't support your application. So we'd only recommend taking the admissions assessment if they are a compulsory requirement. But if they are a requirement of your course, then you do need to take that. You need to prepare for that, register by early October, and then complete that assessment. And as I say, the TSA is one of those that's used for some subjects.
Right. Related to this, Roshan, Dora has a question on whether it's helpful for students to take Cambridge IPQ or Global Perspective in research. Yeah, I think that's a very
Thanks, Dora, for that question. The IPQ is something that universities do like. Here at Cambridge and indeed at many UK universities, we like the IPQ and Global Perspectives in research because it shows that students have the ability to research more broadly, to identify a question, to complete a literature review, and then to complete all of those steps involved in the research process. We don't usually include it within our offers, however, at Cambridge, although some colleges may do on occasion, and we would always still need students to complete their full 3 A levels and for the IPQ to be an extra in addition to that. What I would say is to any student who is working on the IPQ at the moment, or the Global Perspectives and Research A level or AS level, talk about what you have learned from this process. And that's something you can really highlight in a personal statement. The personal statement, especially where the IPQ is relevant to the subject that you are applying for, excuse me, is your chance to really share the skill, share the experience that you have undertaken of the research process. And that can really make a strong personal statement. So yes, we support the IPQ and other research-based qualifications. It can be a good way to stand out.
Right. I think this is also a message to school counselors and school staff that are joining us in this webinar, that there are values, or rather there is value to having IPQ, not just for Cambridge, but other universities as well, right? Moving on.
Definitely, I would say many universities across the UK are supportive of the IPQ.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan, and thanks, Dora, for bringing up the question. Moving on, we have a question. If 2 students from the same school apply, will they lower their chance to get an offer? The same course, the same college, will it affect kind of like there is a quota for them or something like that?
So we don't have any quotas at Cambridge other than for medicine, and that's a quota for international students set by the UK government. But no, it won't make a difference if two students from the same school apply for the same college. We look at every application, every student as an individual. We look at their own characteristics. And if one college does become full and isn't able to consider further applications, then one or both of the students may be pulled to a different college. So there's no disadvantage to two students from the same school applying for the same program.
Right. The next question is related to using AS level results, but this is on for the medical course, whether they can use it to submit for 2023 application.
So no, the AS levels wouldn't be considered on their own. We'd look at them as say students are then going on to complete full A levels. Right.
Okay, a question prior to that. Sorry, do I need to have a fuller CV to increase my chance of getting in, like participating in more competitions, programs, the extracurricular? What's the Cambridge view on this generally? I think there are some other questions here.
That's a really good question. Cambridge really likes to see students who have taken part in things outside of the classroom, who have developed an interest, but it must be related to their subject. So if it's an essay competition or an Olympiad, for example, that relates to the subject that they're applying to, then that's something they should talk about on their personal statement and will be a valuable part of the application. What we're less interested in is experiences that are not considered relevant. So it might be that you have some work experience, or it might be that a student has got involved in sports clubs or societies. But if they're an area that's not linked to or related to the subject that you are applying to, it doesn't help your application particularly. Right. What we're most interested in is those things that are really closely linked to the subject area, and that would be the best advice to students. And there are some good websites. We have one called HE Plus from the University of Cambridge. It gives ideas of supercurricular activities, and by supercurricular we mean the things that relate to the subject area and that can help with your application. So if you're applying for law, for example, reading about some high-profile cases, understanding the judicial system, understanding the different legal systems around the world will help you, and that might be things that you do in your own time because they may not be covered within your high school programs. Whereas if you're applying for law and you tell us all about some activities that you've done, maybe volunteering in your local area to support the wildlife and the conservation project, that conservation project is really valuable, but it doesn't help you necessarily become a better law student in the future. So think about what relates most closely to the subject that you are applying for.
Right. I think there's a question that is related to this later on, so I've already considered that answered. Going back, there's a question on if you apply for a college that's oversubscribed, will you be offered a place an alternative college? I think you've already answered that question, Roshan. But if you
as I say, if one college has made all the offers it can, but they think you're a good student, they will pass you in the pool system to a different college. So that's why in many ways it doesn't matter too much about which college you apply to. If you're a good student, your application will be considered. It just may be considered by a different college from the one you originally applied to.
Sure. Next one, do we need to register for the written assessment?
So for the assessments, we have the assessments you do need to register for, and they are normally in medicine, in economics, in computer science, engineering, natural sciences, and those you need to register normally with your school through Cambridge Assessment Admissions Testing by the beginning of October. The other written assessments that take place as part of the interview process, they're called Cambridge College Registered Assessments, and you don't need to register. Your Cambridge College that you apply to will register you for those, and they take place as part of the interview. So it just depends from subject to subject.
Right. Roshan, the next question actually highlights some of the confusion or misinformation with regard to colleges and courses.
Yeah,
If you could answer that by Tia Wu about
of
the
course.
courses and college. Yeah.
So the colleges, the main thing that you will do at your college is have your accommodation, your housing, your food, your sports facilities. The other thing that you do in your college is your supervision. So your supervisions are your small group teaching, your one-to-one or two-to-one teaching, which you have every week with the college. Each college will have a different supervisor, a different director of studies, but they will all have one. The rest of your teaching, in whichever subject it might be, and in this case, the question from Tia is around education, your lectures, your big group teaching for education is in the Faculty of Education. And so you will meet people from all of the different colleges who will all be studying education for most of your degree. Just the individual teaching, the small group teaching will take place in your own college. And so the experience that you will have will be very, very similar at all of the colleges. You can apply to, I believe, around 25 out of the 29 colleges offer education. So you have a wide variety. Ultimately, the academic experience you get will be very similar at all of the colleges, and most of your teaching, your exams, and your final degree assessment will be the same from whichever college you apply to. So it's important to think about college choice, but don't worry too much about it. The experience will be very, very similar.
Right. Unfortunately, we do not have too much time, so I'm just going to select a few more questions, Roshan. There are quite a number of questions related to international tests and the English test requirements for those who could not sit for it in some countries. It's just not possible. What's your response to that?
So the first thing to say is not every student will require an English language assessment. Once you have applied to us, and if we make you an offer, we'll have a look at if you have completed some of your schooling in English in the past. And we, as part of the interview process, have been able to learn more about the current level of English that you're working at. Then you may not be required to provide an extra proficiency test. However, many students are, and so we would need students to take something like the IELTS test or the TOEFL test or Cambridge English test or similar. Now, we know that it's been very challenging for people to book assessments. We know, and I think there's some students from China joining us on the line today, and I know in some cities at the moment, testing is not possible, and lockdown has made it increasingly difficult. We will work with you to find a way for you to complete an assessment, and we'll look at a variety of different tests. We are currently accepting some of the at-home tests and the internet-based tests where students aren't able to complete a test as part of their centre. So we will be flexible, we will work with you, we will look at the options in your college, we'll advise you, and we are giving you more time to complete that. So you don't need to worry, and you don't need to complete an English language assessment before you apply. You should apply to us. If you're made an offer, we will then contact you with details if we require you to complete an assessment. But for those of you looking to start university in 2023, you wouldn't need to complete your English language test until about a year from now. And we hope that more testing is available in 12 months.
Right. Roshan, I just want to combine these questions together about those who have done A-level receipts or those who have separate exams taken in different series. What's generally your views, or rather your policy on that?
So the university does encourage students to complete their A-levels, usually over a 2-year period. We do know that there are different circumstances as to why students may have needed to complete a resit or completed over more than 2 or 3 exam series. The best thing to say is contact our admissions office in each of the colleges, or whichever college you're looking at, for more advice. They will be able to advise according to your individual circumstances. And if you do make an application, and I know we have some counsellors joining us on the line today, if you're able to provide the reasons as to why a student has in the reference, why they have needed to resit or have needed to take an extra exam series, then that helps us understand the context. And we will look at all the circumstances. We know it has been different in the last few years and things have changed. So we will look at every case on a case-by-case basis and make an individual assessment. But if you want more advice on that, you can reach out to the college in advance of applying.
Right. Roshan, I just want to take 2 more questions considering the time. There's one which I thought was a very good one with regard to what are you looking at in terms of the teacher's reference or school's reference in terms of the components of the letter itself. If you can just provide an advice. I'm sure this is from a school counselor.
Yeah, so to the school counsellors on the line, thank you for all the work that you do, and thank you for all the references. And they make an important part of the application for us. We're really looking to see the context for which a student is learning in. So to learn a bit more about that student, their performance in their different subject areas, if there's something that's unusual, so if their grades, for example, that are predicted are much higher than perhaps they've achieved at IGCSE, why is it? What is it that the student has changed to be able to achieve more now in their A-level programs? And we're looking just to see a bit about, would you ultimately recommend that student for the university level study and for Cambridge? And are there any particular skills or experiences that you think are relevant? There is some really good advice from UCAS as well on the references, and they have some good videos and guidance as well. But ultimately, it's about why you think that student is a good candidate for the university.
Right. One last question, Roshan, with regard to the minimum age. I think there's a question: if I'm 16 when I'm doing my A-levels, would you accept me? Say next year the person is only 17, for example. Is there age requirement? Yeah.
The age requirement that we have at Cambridge is only for our medical programs. If you apply for medicine, you normally need to be 18 just after you start. For any other course, there isn't a minimum age requirement. So we do have students who join us age 16 or 17, and because of the support available in the college and the way that you live in the college with dining facilities and support facilities, you're very well supported even if you are a little bit younger. So that's no problem at all, other than for medicine, where you have clinical placements and it's a rule from the UK government that you have to be 18 before you can work in the hospital. So that's the reason for the medical course.
Right. Thanks, Roshan. I'm afraid we are not able to answer all the questions that you've input in the Q&A box. I do appreciate if you could actually just reach out to university directly or the colleges with your questions, and perhaps that they will be able to provide you a more direct answers to all these questions that you have. I just want to end by saying thank you so much to Roshan once again for joining us in this webinar. We hope to see University of Cambridge in the future again. It's always very helpful to have you or your colleagues here to answer all these different questions. And to all our participants, thank you once again for joining us. We will be sharing with you a Zoom recording. And for those who have asked about the slides from University of Cambridge, no, we are not able to share the slides, but we are certainly able to share with you the Zoom recording. With that, thank you once again, and hope to see you next week for the Destination Netherlands. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Roshan.
Bye.
See you again.